On this episode of Watch Stuff with Us, MrBallen videos part 5. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Watch Stuff with Us. I'm JD.
I'm Katie.
And we are going to be watching a MrBallen video right now and reacting to it live and in the flesh. So if you like what we do, even if you don't like what we do, hit the like button, because nobody hits the dislike button except for you. Don't even think about it. Make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe to our channel, because we really need subscribers and we are trying to get to 500 subscribers and we're a little less than halfway there. So
we would appreciate you.
Yep, we'd appreciate it if you did that. So since we already got those things out the way, let's go ahead and get this video going and we will react to it.
Video is about a medical mystery that ultimately gets solved when somebody uncovers some very unsettling security footage that we will play at the end of this video. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week.
I always get kind of weirded out by the actual found footage stuff. Like that little clip did make me feel a certain way, because that's like that is creepy if you know that there's something medical going on and somebody's messing with your stuff behind the scenes, because that's always been one of my fears, is that when I'm unconscious and in surgery or something like that, or even a doctor, somebody could be messing with my samples, somebody could be doing anything. Like, you're trusting these people with whatever is going on and whatever they're supposed to be finding out, and what if they mess it up?
I've watched so many medical shows, and even though they're fictional, that happens all the time. So
Yeah,
I'm curious to know how much
yeah.
in real life that happens. But
Let's see
hopefully
if there's
not
any,
too often.
let's see if there's any medical malpractice in this one.
If that's of interest to you, please invite the like button to come over to your nice, calm backyard barbecue, but be sure to replace their hot dog with a lit stick of dynamite. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications.
Yeah, you can
so
subscribe to
don't
this
miss
channel, but
any
you
of our
better
weekly
subscribe to
uploads.
ours first.
Okay, let's get into today's story.
So weird.
On May 27th, 2022, an anesthesiologist named Dr. Chad Marsden stood inside of an operating room with a nurse, a surgeon, and their unconscious patient. Dr. Marsden
Nothing
Scares
unusual
me.
there.
No, it still scares me though. Like, there's nothing like that moment before you are put to sleep.
Yeah, it's true. Where you're
just
like, oh my god, this might be my last time on Earth.
Right, this might be my last thought.
Like, does anybody not think that? Or because
Oh.
I think that every time too.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who can just be cool with going into surgery or knowing that they're going to be under anesthesia and not feeling like, you know what, like, I feel like everything's okay, but I'm a little nervous right now.
You know,
This
last
might
time they
be
wheeled
it.
me away from you, I was like, wait, I need a hug. Like,
And like,
it might be my last one. I don't know.
I was gonna say, even though I always put on a strong face and a strong front
and font.
I was definitely nervous.
Oh, I'm nervous every time they take somebody I know away too.
Yeah, you feel
it's.
Yeah, there's always something in
Yeah.
the back of your head. You think about something could go wrong.
I hate not being able to control situations, and that sounds terrible, but I do, and that feeling of zero control is really scary.
Yeah, agreed.
and then worked at the Baylor Scott and White Surgicare Center in Dallas, Texas. It was his job to make sure patients stayed asleep during surgery and then woke up safely afterward. That day, Dr. Marsden and his colleagues were wrapping up a routine liposuction procedure on a middle-aged woman. The surgeon had just finished stitching up the woman's incisions, and so Dr. Marsden, following protocol, began taking her slowly off of anesthesia to wake her back up again. And so Dr. Marsden turned off the anesthesia machine, which is this big rectangular device that takes the liquid anesthesia drugs and converts it into a vapor so it can be breathed in. And then Dr. Marsden removed the breathing mask from the woman's face. Then he changed her IV from an anesthetic drug mixture to regular saline. And so now that these drugs were not being pumped into her system, she would wake up over the next half hour or so. After that, Dr. Marsden and the nurse and the surgeon took their patient on the stretcher and they pushed her out of the OR into the hallway and began making their way down towards the recovery room. But
Everything routine thus far, right?
Nothing scary yet.
Yep. Don't feel any certain way about this video. This is it. It's nothing. Nothing. But I'm guessing that they would have to.
Oh yeah, it's gonna get more interesting.
Something's gonna make it a little more spicy, right?
Let's check.
hallway and began making their way down towards the recovery room. But as they were walking down this hallway, they bumped into more of their colleagues, another nurse and another anesthesiologist, and the hallway was tight enough that Dr. Marsden had to step aside to let these two pass. And then after they did, and they sort of waved at their colleagues, Marsden, the nurse, and the surgeon continued walking, and as they did, Marsden happened to look down at their patient, and immediately he knew something was wrong. This woman's skin had turned completely gray. Dr. Marsden was
See, worst fears unlocked.
I feel like anytime anybody's skin turns gray, that is a terrible sign.
If you resemble
You
an
did.
alien, that is not a good look.
You did.
And then like that, man, yeah. I'll talk about it later.
Hard by this. He looked at her vital sign monitor and saw that her blood pressure, which just moments ago had been normal, was now dangerously high. And then, as he's staring at her monitor, her blood pressure plummeted. And then also her oxygen levels fell. And then she began foaming at the mouth. It was clear this woman was going into cardiac arrest, which meant if they didn't act quickly, her heart was going to stop. Now, Dr. Marsden, again, is sort of in shock at how quickly this is happening, but he just jumped into protocol. He began giving the woman chest compressions to make sure blood was flowing to her heart. Meanwhile, the surgeon administered oxygen and blood pressure medication, and the nurse called for an ambulance. The reason she had to call for an ambulance is because the Surgicare Center was not equipped to handle medical emergencies. It was only for scheduled surgeries. And so if there was
Now that's something that I think about all the time too. Is that
I've heard a lot of situations like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
you go to, like, even when I had my last surgery, I wasn't at a hospital. I was at a surgical center, and that does make me nervous. Like, if you, at least if you're at a hospital, they have all the people you need there to take care of
and
you
all the
if something should
medications
happen.
and all the machines
Yeah,
and
like
everything.
everything is in house.
You don't have to
Everything is
worry
good.
about taking the time to transport you to somewhere else and
Right.
possibly you croaking on the way.
Right. But yeah, when you do a surgery at a surgical center, like, you don't necessarily know how many people are there. Like,
Mm-mm.
I've had a surgery where I had my knee worked on, and the surgery is very early in the morning, and I'm pretty sure the team that was with me and maybe 1 to 2 additional people were the only ones that were there, and that made me nervous. Now, when I had my most recent surgery, that one, there were a lot of people there. Like, there were a lot of people waiting for surgery. Once they wheeled me in the back, I saw a lot of people there. So that made me feel pretty good, pretty safe, as you can.
Right.
When
as
you're
secure
gonna
as
be
you
in
can
surgery.
about the situation, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
emergency, all they could do was just stabilize the patient until paramedics arrived. And that's exactly what Dr. Marsden, the nurse, and the surgeon did. They got this woman stable, and then just a minute later, 2 paramedics came running down the hallway. They took possession of the patient, they put her onto their stretcher, out the door they went, they put her in the back of the ambulance, and they sped off to the local hospital. As Dr. Marsden watched the ambulance disappear down the road, he knew his patient was now in good hands, but he was still very shaken by the whole experience. Because this type of emergency, somebody going into unexplained sudden cardiac arrest following a totally routine surgery, was extremely rare. Meaning, for this to happen even just once over the course of somebody's medical career, to have witnessed something like that, was very rare. But for Dr. Marsden, this was not the first time he had seen this. In fact, literally the day before, a different patient at the Surgicare Center had also gone into sudden, unexplained cardiac.
No.
Okay, do you think that they told them, the other patient, that, like, hey, you know what? We're going to do your surgery today. We're hoping that everything goes fine. But
No.
yesterday, we had somebody going to cardiac arrest.
No,
We
they
don't want you to go into
absolutely
cardiac
are
arrest
unable
either.
to say anything like that.
Yep.
No, so they cannot disclose that. So
That's so scary.
okay,
Like,
who's messing with the IV bag?
I mean, messing with the IV bag, doing something with the whatever's supposed to bring you back and help you like to recover, because all
Mhm.
this stuff happened after they started slowing things down and like trying to bring them back,
No, there's either something wrong with the mixture that they have or the person
or
administering it
somebody's messing
is
around.
yeah.
Yep, somebody's doing something
No,
that ain't
thanks.
kosher.
Arrest following their routine procedure. So, as Dr. Marsden went back inside and began heading upstairs to the hospital administrator's office to tell them about this latest emergency, he kept thinking to himself how crazy it was that he had just witnessed these two unexplained sudden cardiac arrests
Back
basically
to back.
back to back. But Dr.
Eh.
Marsden just thought to himself, hopefully this is just a really bad coincidence. The Surgicare Center's administrator was a woman named
She looks shady already.
Not that she looks shady. Like, doesn't she look? Doesn't look like an AI picture? Like, that does not look like a real picture. That looks like something that AI like made up as a person and said like, you threw in generic name like Susan Rasmussen, and this is what came out. I
I
don't know
just
why I
what
said
year was
Rasmussen.
this? I'm just curious because
I
she's
don't
got
know.
like she's still working that hair bump.
The hair bump is cute though. It's cute.
Yeah.
It's cute.
I don't know. There's something
She got
evil.
the bump it.
There's something evil in that look.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I trust her.
Yeah, there probably is a little something behind that smile. That does make me
Yeah, she like,
just slightly nervous. Slightly nervous.
And when she heard about this second unexplained cardiac arrest, she knew she had to call a staff meeting. And so that evening, she, along with Dr. Marsden and over 24 other medical staff, doctors, nurses, other anesthesiologists, they met in this conference room in the back of the building. And once everybody was assembled, Ashley began by updating everyone on the two patients who had been rushed off to the hospital for their cardiac emergencies. And she said they had stabilized and they'd be okay. But Ashley then said what everybody in the room was thinking, which is sudden unexplained cardiac arrest is so rare, we can't just treat these things like coincidence, like something specific.
Why is the background of his video like misty? Like, I'm watching, I'm not even listening to him exactly. I'm like watching the mist in the background. Like, why is that there? Is that AI mist? Why am I talking about AI so much? I don't know. But what is that? Like, why does that just make it, is that for like spookies? The spookies?
yeah, that's all the people that passed
Oh, okay. Hmm.
in cardiac arrest during the
Hmm.
surgeries at this
So it's cardiac arrest mist.
surgical center. It's a people mist.
People mist. Okay. Interesting theory. Don't think I agree with that one.
I'm right.
Was. Now, it was possible that the cause or causes behind these incidents were quite simple. Ashley said to the group, the first thing she did was she looked at the two patients' files to see if they had specific drug allergies or medical risk factors that might have been overlooked by staff. But when she looked at their files, neither patient had those risk factors or allergies, so that couldn't have been it. Ashley said she also looked for just a common thread between these two incidents. Like, were the patients doing something similar? Were they in for similar reasons? Were they in the same room? But no, they were in different operating rooms, going through different procedures with different medical teams.
Okay. Do you have a theory thus far? I mean, outside of foul play, like we can't predict foul play unless we're going to say it's got to be foul play.
I mean, I'm just thinking that there's something with the serum that they're injecting these patients with after their anesthesia is
And I
taken
mean, I
away.
want to
It's
know,
like I don't know what else it'd be if you got a whole, totally different care team.
right? What I want to know is what, okay. So we saw the little video snippet earlier. So obviously there is some foul play going on. Somebody's deciding to mess with this stuff and they're trying to hurt or kill patients as they're recovering. Um, Outside of being sinister, what is a reason to decide to do this? Like,
You,
do you just want to be a serial killer? Like, do you just want to get away with murder? Or is there some other reason? Like, I want to know the motivation behind stuff. I don't want somebody to just do something random and crazy just because they want to do something random and crazy. I need to know why. MrBallen, you better give us the why.
I'm just guessing it's somebody that has beef with the surgical center itself. Because if you have the care
Mm.
team change and none of the people are the same, then I feel like it's not like you have a vendetta against any particular.
It's particular.
specific, particular person. It's particular.
Yes,
It was
that works.
that was a good word. But I don't feel like you have that against anybody in particular. It maybe just the care center itself. Maybe you got fired. Maybe you know some stuff. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't really have a good answer yet.
yeah. I don't either, but I'm invested now. I want to see what's going on.
Was no obvious common thread between the two incidents. So Ashley said to the group that the only reasonable explanation that she could think of, at least at this
Foul
point,
play.
was that perhaps the equipment in the Surgicare Center had malfunctioned. And so what she was going to do, out of an abundance of caution, was just begin testing all of the equipment in the building. And so Ashley
Okay.
told the group that in the meantime, while she was doing that, the rest of the staff should be extra attentive to their patients and also be on the lookout for potential problems with hospital equipment. Ashley watched the medical staff all nod their heads in agreement and begin sort of talking to each other, and then she thanked them all for being there and told them they could leave. 3 weeks later, on the afternoon of June 22nd, Ashley stood outside the OR in the hallway looking through a cabinet that contained surgical drugs. Ashley was still trying to find a connection between those two sudden cardiac arrests. She'd already checked all the Surgicare Center's equipment, from the anesthesia machines to the vital sign monitors to the breathing tubes, and everything was in perfect working condition. And so now, checking these drugs inside of this cabinet was sort of like her last resort. She'd printed out a list of recent drug recalls and was now comparing that list against all of the drugs inside of this cabinet. And so one by one, she was reading a drug and checking the date on it and comparing it with her list to make sure, they were not carrying recalled drugs still. But after going through dozens and dozens of bottles, there was nothing in their cabinet that was on the recall list. So Ashley still
Okay, so it ain't the drugs and it isn't the equipment. I have no clue what it could be then.
Hmm.
still just did not have an answer for why those two cardiac emergencies had happened. However, since that staff meeting 3 weeks earlier, the Surgicare Center had not had another cardiac emergency. And so Ashley was thinking
Okay, have they said that they'd looked at the staff yet? Who was there? Like, was there any similarities in the people who were there? Or no, they said it was two different teams, right?
Yep.
Man,
maybe, despite not knowing how this happened, these troubles are in the past. Ashley shut the drug cabinet and walked down the hallway towards the break room to grab her lunch. But the moment she walked inside, she saw a group of her colleagues sitting around a table looking very upset. In fact, some people were visibly crying. And so Ashley walked up to them and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And a nurse told her that one of their colleagues, an anesthesiologist named Dr. Melanie Kaspar, was dead. Apparently, the
so now the anesthesiologist is dead.
Hmm.
So if this is the person doing this, they got 3 murders under there.
Or she
right
did it
now.
herself.
Maybe she was like testing it out to see if it was going to like work, and maybe she wanted to die. So it was
She's
like
trying. Well, maybe
assisted
she was trying to
stuff.
do some kind of experiment, and yeah, she realized that she accidentally killed 2 people and felt guilty. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe.
apparently the night before she had had a heart attack at her home, and her husband had found her and called 911. But unfortunately, by the time paramedics arrived, she was already deceased. Ashley was shocked. She knew Dr. Kaspar, and she knew she was in great shape. She was only in her mid 50s. I mean, she did not seem like someone who might just randomly have a heart attack. But then also, Ashley began to think that she remembered hearing in the last few days that Dr. Kaspar had actually been feeling sick. And so she wondered if maybe whatever illness she was suffering from had something to do with her heart attack. Either way, as the Surgicare administrator, it was Ashley's job to plan
Mm-hmm.
staff events like memorial services. And so Ashley told the group, like, "Hey, I'll get to work putting together a small ceremony for Dr. Kaspar." 5 days later, on June 27th, Ashley was sitting in front of her office computer ordering supplies for Dr. Kaspar's memorial when suddenly she heard these loud, fast footsteps out in the hall as if somebody was sprinting towards her office. And then a moment later, Ashley saw her door burst open, and the anesthesiologist, Dr. Chad Marsden, was standing there, and he looked absolutely horrified, and he just said to her, "It's happening again." Ashley's stomach dropped, and she jumped up and sprinted after Dr. Marsden, and they made their way to the hallway outside of the OR. And when they got there, Ashley immediately heard the sound of that long single beep of somebody's heart monitor flatlining, And she looked over and she saw one of the doors to an operating room was open, and inside she saw a surgeon performing chest compressions on an elderly patient. And even from out in the hall, Ashley could tell this man was unconscious, his skin was gray, and he was foaming at the mouth. It was exactly like the other cardiac emergencies that had happened before.
The
Excuse
foaming at the mouth part sounds like poison or like some bad reaction.
Yeah, why is this clinic still open? I feel
Right?
like after the first death, you should have closed to do like some kind of like training
Well, the
or
other two people didn't
like.
die.
Oh
They
well,
they got saved.
that's true. But
But yeah, you would think that there'd be some kind of investigation or
after the second one, you close for a little
yeah.
bit. After
Well,
the
they did
coworker
their
passes,
own.
you close for a
They
while.
did their own investigation though, and
Yeah, but
it didn't bear any fruit. So I
hmm,
don't know. Yeah, I don't know if
this is
yeah,
real shady.
it is. It is, and I need to. Yeah, I need to know.
It's cursed.
I hope it's not something
I
like
feel like they should call to like make the appointments and just be like, I'm just confirming your appointment. Also, before I say like that's a set in
just
stone. I want to make
FYI,
sure you know that there's a
right?
possibility right now. There's a 50-50 chance that something might go wrong.
That you're
Maybe like
gonna go into
80,
cardiac
80%
arrest.
chance now.
Yeah, I wonder how many other successful surgeries had they performed
Right. How many
during
do
this
they do on?
time.
Yeah.
Like were things okay, and then boom, here's another one, and then everything was good for a little while, and boom, here's another one, or was it like literally three back to back, and like they just happened in like in succession? So
I don't like it.
yeah, I don't either.
Except this time was worse, because that beep, that flatlining beep, meant that this man's heart had actually stopped. And so Ashley just stood there in horror, watching the surgeon perform these chest compressions, knowing that if that didn't work, if they couldn't get this man's heart started again, he was about to die. Just then, Ashley heard the sound of the doors leading into the OR hallway open, and these two paramedics came rushing inside, and right as they passed her and got to the doorway leading into where this man was basically dying, Ashley heard the sound of the flatline beep turn into regular beeping, which meant the surgeon who was doing chest compressions had managed to restart this man's heart. And so Ashley was relieved, but by no means thought they're out of the woods yet. I mean, this man clearly is going through a medical emergency here. But the paramedics got the man off the OR table, they put him on a stretcher, and they wheeled him away. And so once they were gone, Ashley, Dr. Marsden, and the surgeon who'd been doing the chest compressions, they all just looked at each other like, what is going on here? Clearly, there is something causing all these sudden cardiac arrests, but still nobody knew what it was. Ashley just stood there for a moment, feeling.
Yeah, at that point you need to stop. You gotta shut the center down because we're gonna find out what's going
You need some more help.
on. We got one person
You need some
watching.
milk.
Jess, hello, what's up? What's going
Hey.
on? Thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely sick to her stomach. If it wasn't the drugs and if it wasn't the medical equipment that caused these sudden cardiac arrests, then what was it? Well, Ashley was determined to find out.
AI Ashley.
Stop.
AI Ashley.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, my very first book, MrBallen Presents Strange, Dark, and Mysterious, The Graphic Stories, is out right now and shipping
Right,
worldwide.
yeah,
You can find it wherever books or audiobooks are sold.
see how long
This
this
book
is
is
like.
truly a brand new experience for anybody who's a fan of old every single storytelling is just.
All right, yep. Go buy his book if you want, but subscribe to our channel, please and thank you.
Over
He
the
is
next
not a
2 months,
baller. He's a
Ashley interviewed
storyteller.
and observed every single employee of the surge care center to make
Might be
sure
a
they
baller.
really were following their protocol absolutely to a T. And one after another, through her research, she discovered that they all were. They were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing. So the cardiac arrests could not be chalked up to faulty equipment, recalled drugs, or human error. And yet, the cardiac emergencies kept on happening at the Surgicare Center. There were 3 incidents in July and 4 more incidents in the first 3 weeks of August.
All right. If you're watching right now, what are your theories on why these things are occurring? And if there's foul play, that's your theory. What is the person's motivation behind doing this, other than just being evil?
Somebody
I'd
needs to
love to know
alert.
what you think.
Somebody needs to alert the media, though. Like, this should be out there for the public to know before they come into this clinic.
Yeah. Like I would
Something's
never.
wrong.
And I mean, you have to think that these types of things do happen,
Yeah.
and people do have issues at surgery centers, but like we don't know. Like me and you have had surgery in the last few years, so how many people were lost or got gravely ill at the surgery centers that we were at? Nobody tells you. I guess I never asked, but maybe I should ask next
I
time.
don't know. You want to know the answer, though, right before
True.
you go in.
True. Make you think twice about doing it.
Yep.
August. And so in total, that made 10 patients at the Surgicare Center who had all gone into sudden unexplained cardiac arrest. Now, none of them had died, but Ashley knew a few of them had been left with permanent heart damage. People were getting seriously injured on her watch. And she felt like, she can't figure out what's going on here. And so it's just a matter of time until somebody does die from one of these cardiac emergencies. And so she was feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed out and desperate until August 24th, when two things happened in quick succession. First, in the morning of August 24th, Ashley received a phone call from an officer at the Dallas Police Department, and they told her that the autopsy had been completed on Dr. Melanie Kaspar, the anesthesiologist who had died back in June from a heart attack at her home. And this police officer thought that Ashley really needed to know that her heart attack had not been natural. It was actually caused by an overdose of a drug called bupivacaine. So Ashley knew what bupivacaine was. It was a drug that was basically only used in surgical anesthesia. But Ashley had never heard of anybody abusing this drug or overdosing on it, because bupivacaine does not make you high like morphine or fentanyl does. It's closer.
So the anesthesiologist, like who's her husband or something? Like there has to be some sort of tie to whoever this person is that has access to these things.
I don't know, because it's still
Yeah, because
like,
how could you
why do you
make
have a grudge with all these random strangers too?
right? And how did you make this person overdose on this stuff? Like,
You're not even
yeah,
in.
this
You don't have access to all that.
right. This doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
Closer to Novocaine. It's like a numbing agent. And so Ashley told the officer how weird it was, the idea that she had died of an overdose of bupivacaine, of all drugs. And the officer agreed with her. But regardless, he thought Ashley should know, because he thought it was possible that Dr. Kaspar had gotten the bupivacaine from the Surgicare Center. And so, feeling totally
Makes
confused,
sense.
Ashley thanked the officer for telling her, then they hung up, and then Ashley walked to the OR hallway to check the drug cabinet where drugs like bupivacaine were stored. But as soon as she entered that hallway, the second thing happened that day. Ashley heard chaos break out inside of an operating room where she knew an 18-year-old boy was undergoing what should have been a routine sinus surgery. And so she watched helplessly as the doors flung open and a nurse came running out into the hall to call an ambulance. And then inside the room, Ashley saw an anesthesiologist performing chest
Bro.
compressions on this boy, and another doctor was administering oxygen and
Like,
blood
yeah,
pressure
you need to stop.
medication. It was the same nightmare playing out now for an 11th time. But this time, after
11 times.
Okay.
If it's happened more than 2,
Look,
you're done.
I thought the count was at like 4, but if this happens 11 times, okay, that's some greedy stuff. Like you are so desperate to keep the money train going that you're willing to overlook that you've had this happen and people who are healthy have went into cardiac arrest and either died or got close to dying
Right.
11 different
You don't, you're,
times.
yeah, you don't really care about them to
No, you
continue
don't care
doing
about your
this.
patients. Like
Mm-mm.
you need to figure out, you need to get to the bottom of it, because obviously at that point it's not random. When I thought it was just 4, because they really only have talked about 4 of the cases in this video, when I thought it was a 4, it was like maybe a person could think that like this is just horrifically bad luck. But honestly, you get past 3 and you're like, no, something's going on. But 11, 11.
Mm-mm. That's absurd.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy and not okay.
And they all should be suing
Yeah, seriously.
for sure.
Seriously.
The patients, not the
Yeah.
not the people working.
No, they should for sure.
Mhm.
EMTs wheeled this boy away to be driven off to the local hospital, Ashley was so desperate to figure out what was going on here that she just couldn't wait. And so she rounded up a couple of hospital staffers that were nearby, and they went into that operating room and they checked the medical equipment, they checked the drugs that had been used, they searched the floor for anything that might have had something to do with this. I mean, they even searched the trash can. And in the trash, Ashley found something that the second she saw it, it made her blood run cold. She couldn't believe somebody would do something this awful, or why they would do this. And so she took the thing she found in the trash and she ran out of the operating room and upstairs to call the police. Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived at the Surgicare Center and they saw what Ashley had found in the trash. And when they looked at it, they knew they had a very serious situation on their hands. And so right away, they roped off the operating room where this 18-year-old boy had been, and they began looking for evidence inside of there. And then also, they began reviewing the security camera footage from the OR hallway. And
Which you should have done the first time.
Okay. First time I get.
Right.
Second time I get. Third time I'm skeptical. Fourth time, no, you need to check on some stuff. By this time, after that fourth time, they should have tore that place apart and looked for everything, including watching every video
Of
you
course,
can.
watch the videos because then you know who is doing what and when and what time, and that should be because that should all be documented anyway.
Yes. How do you get this far down the line and have not checked the security cameras? Because obviously, once you get past the fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth time, there's foul play going on. Something's happening. If your equipment is good, if the medication is good, it has to be the people.
Like, how do you just instill that much faith in your staff that you don't even look into it more?
I don't think that they're instilling faith. That was just negligence.
Heck of a lot of it.
Footage, they would find something truly chilling going on in that hallway that totally explained all of the sudden cardiac arrests that had been happening inside the Surgicare Center. This is what they saw on the clearest piece of footage, which was shot 5 days earlier on August 19th. A hospital employee is seen walking down the OR hallway carrying a stack of papers under his arm. He walks past a couple of his colleagues and he arrives in front of this big metallic device that sort of looks like a refrigerator, and he opens it up and he reaches inside and he pulls out a saline IV bag. Now, when he does this, nobody else in the hallway bats an eye because this is a totally normal thing to do. That metal device was a warming machine where saline IV bags were stored to be used during or after surgeries. At any given point, this warmer would contain a few dozen IV bags, and whenever it got low, certain staff members would restock it. But the police watched this footage over and over again, and they saw this employee who walks up to the warmer was not just carrying a stack of papers. He was also hiding something within those papers, his own saline IV bag. And so before this man takes out an IV bag from the warmer, he takes this hidden one and places it in the warmer as well. So he's basically swapped one for one. And this was absolutely bizarre because it was not his job to be restocking the warmer. He shouldn't have been putting anything inside of the warmer. And so about 30 minutes after this employee has placed his own IV bag inside of the warmer, a nurse comes out of the OR, walks down the hallway, opens up the warmer, takes one of the warmed up IV bags, carries it down the hall, goes back into the OR, and minutes later, her patient goes into cardiac arrest. It would turn out that nurse had inadvertently grabbed the saline bag that the male employee had secretly placed just minutes before. And she didn't know that that saline bag is what caused the cardiac arrest. Nobody knew until days later when Ashley is so desperate to figure out why all these patients are going into cardiac arrest that she began searching through the trash, and she would find an empty IV bag, and she would see very clearly there was a little puncture on it, just big enough for a needle. And so after seeing this security footage, the police analyzed that empty IV bag that Ashley had found in the trash with the puncture on it to see exactly what was in that IV that went into the 18-year-old who also went into cardiac arrest. And inside, they found a combination of 3 drugs that when combined are like a biological bomb that will send somebody into cardiac arrest within minutes. They were lidocaine, which is an anesthetic, epinephrine, which is basically pure adrenaline, and crucially, the third drug found was bupivacaine, the anesthetic that Dr. Melanie Kaspar had overdosed on, which caused her to die of a heart attack. And this discovery meant that Dr. Kaspar's death was almost certainly connected to these poisoned IV bags.
Okay, so
How did she get that solution into her body, though?
right, how is this? Is she stealing IV bags, or like there has to be some sort of relationship between her and the guy who is restocking this stuff, or she's like taking IV bags for herself and like using them at home or
Or he's
something.
putting the solution in her drinks to get it in her
But
system.
how is he? Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Because I don't know how
She has like a water bottle and he like
she's
adds
not.
it to it.
She's probably not just like hooking up an IV during work.
That's what I'm saying. Of course not. I would think not.
She would know if he was injecting her with a syringe. So that's my guess is he's adding a little bit of something to her drinks or her food or
All right,
something
you're the one who specializes in the murder mysteries and all that stuff. So let's see if you're right.
In the few days before Dr. Kaspar's death, she had been feeling sick and dehydrated. And on the day of her death, she was feeling so unwell at work that, unbeknownst to any of her colleagues, she had taken a saline IV bag from that warmer and brought it home with her to rehydrate herself.
Come on, man.
Pretty sure that's illegal too, but
yeah. And then she took the spike one. Like that's okay, that's wild. That's messed up. Like okay, she shouldn't have been stealing it in the first place, but she decides to steal it and gets a bad one.
She probably just had the flu or something and just wanted some more saline.
That's fine, but you can't take it from your job.
No, I know. I'm just saying I think my theory is debunked because she
Yep.
I thought maybe she was being slowly poisoned.
She just did it to herself. Dang, man. Well, yeah.
Unknowingly did it to herself.
Yeah, true.
Still made a bad choice. But
yeah, shouldn't have taken it to begin with.
No.
But yeah, turned out to be a bad steal.
Well, that's why you don't try to do
Steal
things that are not appropriate.
Yeah.
Do things that you're not supposed to do because karma gets you.
Note to yourselves: don't be a sneaky McSneakerson.
Hydrate herself. But unfortunately, the one that she grabbed was one of the poisoned ones. When paramedics arrived at Dr. Kaspar's home, they found her still with the IV needle in her arm. But at the time, nobody connected her death with all of the cardiac emergencies at the Surgicare Center. Well, nobody except for the employee who was actually poisoning the IV bags. That employee was an anesthesiologist, but it was not Dr. Chad Marsden. It was the person that Dr. Marsden had to get out of the way for in the hallway that first time his patient had gone into cardiac arrest. The man who was doing the tampering was Dr. Reynaldo.
He looks like a man who'd be doing tampering.
I was going to say, he looks like a tamperer.
Tamperer. Look at him. He's just like, I did it. I have no shame.
I want to kill some people. Like, diabolical.
People
I've used that word so many times. Yes, they do. I don't understand this. Like, why do you just want to? Like, it's one thing to be out there on some stuff where you like want revenge and you're trying to hurt somebody because of that. I'm not saying that it's justified, but
to do it to complete strangers that didn't do anything to you, like that's another level.
That's a level above everything else. And
yeah,
you deserve a.
Dude looks shady.
Yeah, he looks shady. And like, who on their mugshot is? If this is mugshot, who smiles on their mugshot like this? Like that. I don't like this dude at all already. Even after he killed 11 people or however many people he killed.
He was 58 years old, and he had only worked at the Surgicare Center for about a year. And he had flown mostly under the radar there until May 19th of 2022, which was about a week before the sudden, unexplained cardiac arrests had begun at the Surgicare Center. On that day, on May 19th, Dr. Ortiz had allowed one of his patients to stop breathing, nearly killing the patient. And so as a result of that incident, Dr. Ortiz had been placed under internal investigation by the Surgicare Center, and he was facing the possibility of losing his medical license because of negligence. So to try to avoid losing his medical license, Dr. Ortiz decided he would just try to make all the other doctors look negligent too, taking the attention off of himself. And so he began sabotaging his colleagues' surgeries by injecting those drugs into their patients' IV bags, knowing it would cause.
And still
What
walking
what a
past all the other.
stupid theory. Like his what a stupid way of trying to get away with things. Like, I'm gonna bring more heat on everybody else so that they don't think that it's just me.
There's a lot of
But
people that do that
instead,
though.
but instead, you're still bringing all this heat and all this scrutiny upon your area, and that's gonna get you caught up.
I'm still stuck on the fact that so many people came in contact with him every day and saw him in areas he shouldn't be, saw him handling products that he shouldn't be.
Nobody said that he was
And
creepy. Like,
right,
this dude had to be creepy.
like he's stealthily going around, probably not so stealthily, but going around swapping items, handling things that he doesn't normally be, touch, go around, and nobody says anything. Like how he did this so many days. It's not just one day y'all missed him. All
Right.
the days.
Yes.
This guy.
Patients who went into cardiac arrest at the Surgicare Center died. However, Dr. Kaspar, who took that tampered IV bag home with her, did die. And so ultimately, Dr. Ortiz was responsible for her death. In April of 2024, Dr. Ortiz was found guilty on multiple charges, and he is currently facing a sentence of up to 190 years in prison.
Dang. I don't think he's gonna make it all those years.
Probably not. I mean, so maybe somebody's gonna give him an IV bag in prison, and that'll keep him alive as opposed to killing him. Dude, all right. Well, there you got it. That was an interesting MrBallen video. What are your final thoughts on it?
I'm just baffled about how many blind people there are in the world, and I don't mean that literally, but just how many people don't pay attention. Like in your workplace generally, you kind of do the same thing every day, or most people do, especially in that kind of setting. And so if you're seeing something abnormal, that should be standing out, but it's not. And to I don't know, I feel like so many people were semi to blame in this for overlooking everything, but also this guy's a nut job.
I think outside of Dr. Ortiz, the person who deserves the most blame is the lady who runs the surgical center, because she allowed the place to continue to be open all of this time while you have 11 people who have went into cardiac arrest over a relatively small period of time.
Yeah.
After a certain point, you have to stop everything. There should be some kind of peer review that happens at a place like this.
Well, he's already on
Yeah,
watch or whatever it's
probation.
called.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wouldn't you think that you would kind of check him out
He'd be the first
soon?
one. Unless you got other people there that are on
Well, he's
probation
trying to make
too.
them all look guilty, but well, yeah, I don't know how many people were on
Right.
probation.
Which
But
makes
like
me
I
think
would
that
have like looked at him a little bit more closely because he's on probation.
it makes me think that this lady who was running this place was shady to begin with.
That's what I said. She looked a little iffy.
So yeah, what do you think? Drop a comment below and let us know who's to blame in this situation, or at least who deserves the biggest share of the blame. Drop that comment below. Let us know what you think. I'm JD.
And I'm Katie.
Thanks for watching another episode of Watch Stuff with us. Peace.